Has getting access to money to finance your business often been a challenge for you? We'll be discussing that in this program. You'll also meet a young Brooklyn academic achiever from Ocean Hill Middle School. This is Brooklyn45. Getting access to money to finance a business has often been a challenge. You have a business idea, then what? You've got a business, now how do you grow it? Julianna Dawson, private equity investor and business entrepreneur, is my guest to discuss this challenge. Welcome to Brooklyn45, Julianna.
Thank you, Sam.
What was the biggest challenge when you decided you wanted to start your own business?
Well, finding the money to fund my ideas was one of the biggest challenges that I had. Not knowing where to go was really a very tough experience. So I had to become very creative.
I always tell people everything begins with an idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Where did this idea come from and what was the idea?
Okay, well, I have ideas all the time,
You're an author, so you should.
Absolutely. Like you said, I'm a poet, I'm an author, I speak. I'm also an expert in selling, advertising, digital and print advertising. So I come up with ideas all of the time for my clients, and I often end up coming up with ideas for myself, and then I wonder where exactly, do I go for funding to follow through on these things.
Where did you go for your funding?
Well, when I first started, the first place that we started to look at was the equity in our home, taking loans to do that with. There were some challenges with that, especially with the recession that happened over the last several years. We actually ended up doing a loan to ourselves, for example, through our 401k, which we didn't consider at first because, that's kind of considered a sacred money that you're not supposed to touch. But we thought about it and we did our evaluations and we really realized that funding your own business or funding yourself as an entrepreneur, funding your own personal passions are just as important as funding your retirement.
Do you give this advice to other people who have ideas?
I am now that I've actually tested it myself and I'm doing it myself. I usually don't recommend anything that I haven't tried and done for myself. But I've really kind of looked at the entire situation and I find that it's a place that people don't usually look. And when you're having challenges getting a loan, for example, that's at a reasonable rate, some 401ks, for example, it's a 3.5% or 4% or something like that. It might really be a viable place to go to do that.
Many people are discouraged when in seeking loans. They go to a bank, they go to this obvious place.
Yes.
Some people go to investors.
Yes.
Where did you go?
Well, like I said, I tried with the home equity line of credit kind of a thing. I did a lot of education and I was told about people who would lend money and, all of those different things. But the interest rates were just not attractive for me. So that's why I kind of made the decision to go the other route. Once I started to look at the reality of, what was happening with the investments that I had and comparing that to what I could potentially do with that money if I invested it in myself, then that's when I started to kind of begin to make different decisions.
You sound as though you're a private equity advisor. You talk to organizations such as TIAA and other such, and they tell you where to go or how to approach this whole business of trying to get finance.
Yes.
You sound as though you actually advise others.
Well, you know, I feel like I've spent so many years kind of testing different things and figuring it out on my own that I really wanted to share, you know, with other people some of the things that I found out. And I felt really like the traditional methods were just either too expensive or too challenging. And it was an easier route for me personally to go. And now I wouldn't say that it's for everyone, but if you think about it, you know, if you're putting the max into your 401k, if you're doing $18,000 or so a year, if you're married and you have a spouse and they're doing 18 or 20 if they're over 50, you have a pretty decent chunk of money that you're kind of setting aside that's usually going into mutual funds. And there are risk and rewards with those things, things that you don't necessarily have control over. And I am of the feeling that if you marry your personal sole purpose with your business and you're funding that, then it's just as viable as funding a mutual fund or investing it in stock. And sometimes what you get back in return could be substantially more.
Let's talk about this business that you funded.
Well, for me, the business is me. So I do quite a number of things. I call myself multi-passionate because I feel like I have all of these talents, right? So I want to make sure that I utilize them. And that's another thing that I really love to share with other people as well.
Well, let's talk about the advertising business. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, for the advertising business, I've done it for many years. I've sold advertising space and I've worked for Fortune magazine and Newsweek. I've done these as jobs. I've also done them as an independent. I've worked on salary plus commission. And one of the things actually that Tony Robbins shared with me last year when I went to see him was, you know, you have your own business. If you're working on salary, but you have this commission as well, and it's infinite, you know, you can develop that as a business. You actually have a business without a lot of the problems that business owners have. So I came home with a new perspective about that. And, you know, when I went to work, I started to treat it as such. So over the last year since I've done that, you know, I come home to a business unit that is 31% up from last year. And that means, you know, that's that much more commission for me. And that allows me then to take that money and reinvest it in myself, into my other projects. So as I'm working on my books, as I'm developing my poetry, as I decide that I want to travel the world and, you know, share my poetry and speak and share my message, you know, that's why I call, you know, myself the business. And I feel that more people should consider doing that, you know, utilizing all of their talents and thinking about themselves as a business and funding themselves.
Before we talk about this other business, your poetry and your books, why did you decide to go into advertising sales?
Well, it was actually pretty interesting. When I was in college, I was looking for a job, just, you know, like a regular college student, and I ended up interviewing with Fortune magazine for a job in their finance department, but it was in an advertising department. And what I was responsible for doing there at the time was to pay the commissions of the salespeople.
And you saw what you were paying. You decided I should be paying this to myself.
Yeah, when I saw what the salespeople were making in commissions and the fact that their expenses were also paid, I said, you know, I don't know if this accounting degree is going to be right for me. And I started to ask them, you know, what about me as a salesperson? So it took us a couple of years to kind of transition from that, but that's how it began, and I've been doing it ever since.
Advertising, sales,
Yes,
author.
yes.
Let's talk about what you have authored.
Okay. So my first book is called Inspiring Words, Love's Journey. It's a poet.
Life's journey or love's journey?
Love's Journey.
Interesting topic.
Yes, yes.
Why love's journey?
Well, it's a collection of poems. I actually put it together when I was on bed rest. I was on bed rest for 5 months with my twins. I had an emergency surgery, so I wasn't allowed to get up for an entire 5 months. It was a very interesting time. But I realized that I had all of these poems that I had written over the years, and I was doing nothing with them. And at that time, I kind of started to rethink my life, and that's when I decided to put the first book together. So that was the first one.
But why love's journeys?
Love's journey. Well, I mean, love is like the most important thing in the world, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, to me it is.
Okay.
Like, you know, it's
Actually, I know, yes.
Absolutely. So, you know, most of the poems were about, you know, love and relationships. Yeah,
And you have 2 twins that you love.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
said they're 4 years old, and I
They're
asked you
4.
before the interview if they were the terrible 4s. And
No, they're awesome.
your second book.
Yeah, so the second book is about to be launched. It's Inspiring Words, Finding Yourself. So this is a much larger piece of work, and the poems come from all sorts of life experiences. So I have really big plans for the launch of that second book.
What are some of the mistakes that you made, and when you speak to people, you advise them to avoid?
Yes. One of the most recent and biggest mistakes that I would say that I've made, I remember very clearly, I think it was back in 2005, going to the bank and getting pre-approved for a loan, and I think they approved us for something like $340,000. But when we got there and we started looking at the houses, and they said to us, your credit is so good, you know, we can give you 500, or we can give you, you know. So we actually kind of went along with that. And with that inexperience, we ended up in a really bad situation. And when the recession hit in 2008, 2010, we really suffered significantly. We held on as long as we could, but we basically went from being, you know, a family with 800 credit scores, you know, not being late on a credit card in 20 years or more, to really suffering, and we lost that home. I can now safely say that that was one of the best experiences in my life, and I would never have thought that I would have come to that conclusion. But I feel like if I didn't have that experience, I would not be where I am today in terms of the decisions that I've made, you know, about how I will manage our money and how I will make, you know, decisions about investments going forward. So we paid off all of our debt. We had, you know, no debt forgiveness, but we paid off all of our debt during that time. And it's a different life, you know, living without debt. You know, it's...
And not too many people can say that, and not too many small businesses
Right.
Are able to say that.
And it's not easy, you know, so I wouldn't, you know, advocate it to a point where I would say that it's necessarily for everyone to strive for living that debt-free life. It comes with its challenges.
Of course.
If you can imagine, sometimes I have to fly all over the place and stay at hotels and, you know, for my work. And, you know, to fund all of that until it's returned sometimes can be pretty challenging. So it does come with its challenges, but
Sure.
I feel like that experience kind of gave me the impetus for that commitment. And it makes you come up with creative ways to figure out how to do it.
There are many small businesses who don't think that advertising is necessary. Talk about that, because some small businesses can't afford to advertise or may believe that they cannot afford to advertise, not understanding that that type of
Yes.
marketing is important.
Yes, that actually is something I was thinking about just this morning. And I was talking with a friend about over coffee earlier today. One of the things that I find most interesting right now is, especially with digital advertising, the ability to see and understand the results of what you're getting for what you're paying for is absolutely there. The capabilities are there to see, who is seeing your message, who's actually interacting with your message. So it's very different today than it was many years ago. So there's
Explain the digital advertising for small business owners who will be listening to your program, but they hear the term digital advertising, but they really don't have a clue as to what that is.
Oh, so it can range from, in my business, the companies that I sell ad space to, they'll advertise to reach doctors, for example. So they'll advertise in newsletters. They'll advertise on a website that they know that a doctor goes to. So you can, depending on who you're targeting, you can go, you basically just have to figure out where your target audience is, and that's where you're going to advertise. And when it's digital, you should, ask for information about who exactly is seeing your ad and who's interacting with it. Whoever it is that you're making those purchases from should be able to give you, those kind of details, barring any privacy policies that they may have with the users of their sites.
People ask the question, what kind of business should I set up?
Well, for me, it's all about what you're passionate about, right? So for me, I am passionate about people, other human beings. So anything that I can do where I'm interacting with another human being is a place of joy and happiness and fulfillment for me. So when I'm selling advertising space to another person, I'm thinking about how can I help to change that person's life? How can I help to get that person a raise, hit their bonus by providing them with a service that will get them to where they want to go? If I'm working with someone that I'm trying to pull out of the doldrums because they might feel that they may have had some type of an experience that prevents them from going after their goals or their dreams. I love to share my stories about things that I've gone through. Most of the time people are surprised, but I share it because I want people to know that, these are not reasons to stop. These are reasons to keep going. They're your gift experiences.
What about the business organization of these gift experiences? Your business, let's talk about your business and other businesses that you advise. Do you advise people to establish their business as an LLC, as a sole proprietorship? What is your business? And what is some of the advice that you perhaps give people, whether it's through your work as an equity partner, equity advisor, or over coffee?
So, usually I would refer people to, their accountants and their lawyers when they're kind of making those decisions. But really, for me personally, I'm my business. So it's pretty much a one-man show with my assistants. I use virtual assistants, for example, to kind of help me with the different pieces to the puzzle that I have to do for each of these jobs. As you can imagine, there are many aspects to whether it's a book that you're working on or if you're dealing with trying to pitch a client on getting the business for advertising. So, I think it really depends on the individual. If you're just starting and it's just you, I find that virtual assistants, especially if it's a company, for example, where you don't have to deal with one person, and if they're sick or something like that, then you don't have anyone or you have to retrain. So I find that utilizing a company for that kind of a thing, because I've tried both, is a little bit better. So you can kind of have a staff without having a staff. Mm-hmm. It's very inexpensive in comparison, and it doesn't come like with all of the cost of benefits and so forth until you can kind of develop yourself to that stage where you feel that you can handle that level of business.
Julianna Dawson, it was a pleasure having you on Brooklyn45. Author, sales executive, and advertising is so very important today. And the information and the words that you were able to share to business persons, advertising is important, marketing is important.
Yes.
And I wish you success as you continue growing your own business.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim.
Now to our Young Academic Achiever segment. Amir Scott will be interviewing Ciara Vernige, a sixth grader at Ocean Hill Middle School. Amir is a former Young Academic Achiever and is a student at Brooklyn Latin High School. Amir, welcome.
Thank you, Sam. Tonight I'm here with Ciara Vernige, a middle schooler from Ocean Hill Collegiate Middle School. According to reports from her teacher, Mr. Russell Roberts, she is very proficient in her English class, and that is why he's recommended her for the Young Academic Achievers program. Hello, Ciara.
Hello.
I guess to start off, can you tell us where you're from?
I'm from here, but I lived in St. Lucia for most of my life, and then I came back to live here.
Ah, that's interesting. Can you tell us how old you are?
I'm 11 years old.
That's a very young age. It's interesting that you've become so great in your classes and have received such phenomenal reports at such a young age.
Thank you.
Now, based on the reports, it said that you have a 93 average.
Yes.
I think that's very impressive
Thank
for a
you.
young middle schooler. Now, I guess a bit more personal questions. Since the report was from your English teacher, I guess you can say that you like to read.
Yes.
Is it your favorite subject, or do you have a different favorite subject?
Reading isn't my favorite subject, but I like to read. My favorite subject is math.
Okay. So I guess your English teacher said that you have a very wide range of vocabulary.
Yes, I do.
Most people who like words and reading a lot usually have a favorite word, unless you can't choose one, in which they have many favorite words. Do you have a favorite word yourself?
No, not really.
Or maybe a favorite book? Or maybe just the book that you're reading right now?
My favorite books, it's the Divergent series.
Very interesting. Any other books that you like a lot?
Not really.
So, what makes math your favorite subject?
Math is my favorite subject because I like to do it a lot. My brain computes math and my brain computes numbers really fast. So it's the most easiest subject. That is why I have a really high grade in it.
Oh, that's great. Is there anything else that's outside of school that you enjoy? Maybe like a club, a sport?
I like to cook.
Ooh, cooking. That's not one I hear very often. So do you have a favorite dish?
Well,
or a favorite food?
Not really. Just like this.
So do you have any close friends in your school?
Yes. My two best friends are Denisha Davis and Daniel Williams.
Okay. So, I guess, what do you think defines you as a person? Anything about your life, or anything about what you like to learn, or anything that you like to do that you just feel like expresses you as a person?
I like to design dresses and skirts and clothes.
So do you have a color that you feel like you use most often whenever you do these designs?
think.
So I guess what career would you be choosing to go into with this wide range of things that you like?
I would be a lawyer or a math teacher.
Oh, what makes you want to be a math teacher? Are there any teachers in particular which have caused you to really like the idea of being a teacher?
My math teacher, Miss Lee, and my history teacher.
So what do you like about history?
Well, nothing really changed because it's all history. So it's before, so it's like, I don't know.
I guess it's interesting to like explore a time period that you never lived through. I think that your role as an academic achiever means that you do have the ability to eventually change how history will be remembered for the times that you lived through.
Yeah.
What do you think that you can do to just be the best person that you can be in the world?
I can help, I can create like something new and innovative, so that will also help society.
I can definitely see that about you.
Thank you.
You're just very polite, and based on your reports, you're very intelligent. So I definitely can see you as being someone who's innovative and brings something new to the table.
Thank you.
So is there anything that somebody wouldn't be able to tell about you from first glance?
How
Or
old
just,
I
like-
am.
Okay. And anything else that's like interesting about yourself?
Not really.
Okay, that's fine. So it was very nice to meet you and to have you here for this interview.
It was great to be here and nice to meet you too.
And I hope you do very well in the Academic Achievers program.
Thank you.
Okay. This has been Sierra Vernej from Ocean Hill Collegiate. And back to you, Sam.
This is Brooklyn45. Please visit our Facebook page, like us, and post your comments about this program. Your comments and suggestions are important to us. Please also spread the word about Brooklyn45. So, on behalf of our Brooklyn45 team, I'm Sam Tate.